Hello, everybody. All right. Welcome to Q and A number 251. I remember someone said, "Hey, I heard you doing a podcast." And I wouldn't call this a podcast, really. It's not a podcast. It's a Q and A. There's a difference, right? The podcast is more of a uh, formal thing. This is not formal. This is not supposed to be formal. Okay, this is supposed to be you asking me and stuff like that. You ask the questions, and it's real laid back, right? Anyway, so yeah, I wouldn't call this a podcast, but we've racked up a bunch of them, right? And I think we had, even at the first one, I think we had people signing up and checking it out, even from the beginning. That's why I kept doing it, right? Because a lot of this kind of stuff, if it's not like doing anything, I wouldn't keep doing it. I say that, but then there's that story I tell about fishing. Um, anyway, any questions to get us started? Any questions to get us started? While we're waiting for a question, let me give you whatever news I can think of. Hello, Mr. Lampy. Mr. Lampy says, saw Herb Albert last Friday in Las Vegas, 90 years old and still an amazing performer. His trumpet playing is still up to par. That's right. I had a student that went and heard him in New York. Um, yeah, I mean, uh, age has nothing to do with it. It's our health. That's the problem. I know you guys have heard me say that before. You don't stop playing because you're old. You stop playing because you're not healthy anymore. So that's a big deal. Anyway, the Christmas book has been uh, well, let me tell you this. I have moved the Christmas book publishing date to the 8th of July because I knew I was cutting it close. And sure enough, I submitted, oh, excuse me, I submitted the file and they found stuff that needs to be fixed. So we fixed the stuff. I haven't resubmitted yet. Now, we start with the one that takes the longest. I have to submit two. Let me see. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, about 7 or 8 different platforms to get the kind of worldwide coverage that we get. I have to do all these different places to upload the files. Now, this first one is the most picky, and that's because they have to print it. And I do two other print, not two other. Um, so I do this print one. I do another print one that's for coil bound. That way, you guys can go buy the coil bound. If, I'm most trumpet players I teach, not teach. I'm more tired today than I usually am on a Friday. They took out a lot of fluid this time. Um, so yes, the most of the trumpet players that I talk to prefer the coil bound. The truth is, I get less money from the coil bound because I don't want the book to be a different price. I want the price of the book to be the price of the book. And so we get less money on the coil bound because the overhead is a lot higher. Now the digital stuff, that's always better if you go to our website. And you know the good thing about going to our website for this stuff is that if there's a problem, we can take care of it directly. So anyway, Kevin says, "Happy Friday, Mr. Lewis." Well, happy Friday. I have a question. Knowing that we shouldn't be blasting our routines or doing whisper tones, where's the wide possible volume range we could be using? I notice a significant difference in endurance between a more authoritative volume versus what I might call a conversational volume. Should we try to play with a solid volume to increase the workout? You can do that. I did. I was so concerned about a couple of gigs I had coming up. Um, really, I was concerned that I wasn't going to have, because I went all of, sorry, well, not all of, I went most of um, 2024 without, not 20, yeah, that's right, 2024 without a gig. And only really started playing again this year, December of last year. And I was concerned that I might not have, even though I tell you guys, even though I tell you guys that endurance is not as physical as we think it is. Even our own personal experience makes us feel like endurance is physical. But when you really think about the parameters of what makes a good sound and all that stuff, when you get a good sound, the instrument begins to play itself. It's the most marvelous thing for us. I remember this is called efficiency, right? This is what the people who started talking about efficiency, this is what they were talking about. It wasn't, and that got perverted. That the word efficiency got perverted by people who, and they thought it had more to do with volume than it did with sound. So in the 90s, there were people posting recordings of themselves doing these exercises um, where they could play like 2 pages of music without taking a breath. I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. Um, that is not that is not what we mean by efficiency. And I'm going to tell you, it was disgusting. The way it sounded was terrible. It sounded terrible because they weren't putting any air through the horn. So I don't want it to. So even though I believe all that, I also know that playing louder requires your lips to hold the air in more firmly. Your lips, your cheek muscles, all of this has to work harder when you play louder. So I knew that. And so um, I was doing all my routines about twice as loud as I could, as I normally do. About twice as loud as I normally do. Um, so yes, that is a thing. If you are concerned about endurance or you want to increase your endurance, you can make yourself more tired by playing louder. Now, let me be clear about this because that's just physical strength. That's not the other thing we've been talking about, where with the so-called um, efficiency. And I do believe that the efficiency is more important than the physical strength. Even though, so you can say, well, you don't even practice what you preach. That's right. Okay. Uh, you know, sometimes things are more emotional than they are physical, right? And sometimes you have to deal with the emotion. And when I say I was concerned, maybe the more appropriate word would be afraid. I was afraid that if I didn't do something, I would catch myself. Remember, I told you the story about the one gig I had. It was like in early January, and the crowd noise was so high. It was a small room where all the windows, all the doors, uh, all the walls were glass, and all women, no men in the thing, all women yakking, yakking, yakking. And it was loud. And I had two songs that I just couldn't finish. I had to put my horn down. And I didn't want, that's what I mean by fear. I didn't want that to happen again. So sometimes you have to deal with your fear. There's nothing wrong with building more strength. I don't want to give it that impression, right? Sean says, are all of your books available digitally on your website? I would say most of my books are available that way. Um, I have a note that's a post-it that's been sitting here for like 2 or 3 years to to add the All-State Prep book because I noticed it wasn't on there. Um, Let me double check that. Maybe I did it. Maybe I added it. No, it's not there. I think for as far as I know. Now that when I was sick, I might have missed one. If any of you guys ever get onto Tiger Music and find out that there's something you're looking for that's not there, let me know and I'll put it up as quickly as I can. Hello, Karen. Nice to see you. Karen says, if I want to start playing my flugelhorn more, should I try playing it on the routine? Yes. I have no problem with that either. I have no problem with playing it on the routine. I have no problem using it to practice your band music, even though you're not going to play it in the band rehearsal. That said, I had a student that bought a brand new flugelhorn, and he was taking it to his band rehearsals, and then he got chewed out for it. But yes, I don't have a problem with that. Um, Now, I think I've told you guys that I don't practice my flugelhorn. The reason I don't practice my flugelhorn, so yeah, and we talked about this in the context of me listening to a podcast, and the guy in the podcast says he plays every trumpet every day, and I thought, nah, not gonna do that. Not gonna do that. That makes no sense to me. Um, that makes no sense. When you look at it that way, you're not really aware of how the trumpet works. when you look at now, don't get me wrong, I have no problem spending more time on an instrument that you want to spend more time on. Just don't give me any uh I have to be don't give me this I have to be prepared for every instrument I got to play on. That's not a thing. That really isn't a thing. Play on it because you want to play on it. Not because and I get the I shouldn't be talking like this because this dude would probably know who I'm talking about. If he heard what I'm saying, he would know it was him. And you guys know I don't talk badly about people. And that's why I'm not going to mention his name. Um, but that's not how the trumpet works. And if you need quote unquote scientific evidence, I don't like that either, right? That whole appeal to science, uh, what do you call it? Uh, Fallacy, right? There is an appeal to science fallacy. And a lot of times when teachers talk about trumpet teachers, a lot of times when they talk about scientific stuff, it's just so you believe them. Right? It's not it's not scientific. A lot of times it's not. And even if it is genuinely scientific, it's not applicable to you. Because like when they do those cameras with the inside the mouthpiece and stuff like that. We could say that's a little bit more scientific than some other stuff, right? Um, but really, you just because that's happening in else's mouth, and in fact, you know what? I told you guys a week or two ago that I watched some of those videos, and the guy that posted it actually said, um, "Don't take this as pedagogical advice because that's not how it works." So you could say, well, it's more scientific. Um, that doesn't help us because real science is measured, and you cannot measure what's going inside your mouth. Your mouth, not somebody else's mouth. What's happening in your mouth? So these people that are trying to be scientific as trumpet players, it's just a way to sell their ideas to you, so that you believe them instead of somebody else. So, um, anyway, so why am I saying that? Because there's this book called Choke. I've mentioned it here before, even recently, I think. I'm just looking for the author because I can't remember. Sian Beilock, Beilock. She talks about, and I don't believe that this applies only to, I don't believe this applies only to adversity, but she's covering it in the realm of adversity, like in sports, in speaking languages, in playing music. She put those three together in the context of adversity, and she used, if I remember right, most of her examples were from playing soccer. She said, if you're in a soccer, not match, what do you call that? Rehearsal practice, soccer practice, and you train for three adverse conditions. She says, by doing three, you are now prepared for all of them. You don't. It is not necessary. This is what she says in the book. It is not necessary to train for every possibility. It is not necessary. And I believe that doesn't only apply to adversity. I believe that applies to a lot of things like sight reading. The better you don't have to get better at now keys, I think you do have to get better at all the different keys, right? Because that has to be quick. But there's but like styles. When you get better at playing three or more different styles, you're better at all the styles. Now you have the ability to adjust according to what's going on around you. So I do believe there are some other things that work the same way. And one of those things, in my opinion, is the the different instruments. I think when you just by playing on the different instruments, you're going to be better at playing all the instruments that the trumpet instruments, right? C trumpet, E flat trumpet, piccolo trumpet. Um, just by and you know what really just what you do on the gig, if you're a professional player, just what you do on the gig is good enough. It's good enough. All right. David says, "Do you teach motifs in your jazz lessons?" Yes, I do. Um, and you know what? Recently, about about uh, I want to say 2 or 3 months ago, thanks to a student that said he really wanted this, I formalized my um, curriculum. I formalized it, and so now instead of just arbitrarily doing, because that's how it was before, I would look at the student, which motif motif stuff should they do, and we would just like feel it out like that. Now I've got an order for all of it, order for, and I updated the order of the songs too because I realized when I put the curriculum together, the original idea was that you would go through the first five keys first. And then after that, start doing songs that are in two different keys. I realized that was too long. When I was working on this jazz curriculum, formalizing it, I realized that it was taking too long to get through all those five keys. So what I did is I also have some other songs I added as well. Like Black Orpheus, I added that. I don't know if you and I did Black Orpheus or not. Um, and with some other students, like I said, back until 2 months ago, it wasn't as formalized as it is now. It was. Let me backtrack on that. It was formalized. It was just not as clearly formalized as it is now. And so I added some other songs, and then I pushed. I found some songs that actually are in the keys that have two different keys, like "Good Bait." The first two key song that we do is "Good Bait." So there are some differences. Anyway, sandwiched between the songs are the motif stuff, and so that's how I'm doing that now with the students. I like a set curriculum if the set curriculum is um, comprehensive. If it's not comprehensive, then I think we should jump around and not actually follow the curriculum. But if it's comprehensive, then you can apply it to everybody because you're going to cover everything. If the way I see it, if the student has no trouble with this part of the curriculum, instead of jumping around to a more difficult part, why not get that part over with now? Move to the next song or the next assignment. That's how I see it. Okay, that's how I see it. But yes, we do in the lesson we do the motivic stuff. In fact, I'm talking about in the one book I'm writing, which is also real close to being done. I call it the tonalization method, where I go in all deep, deep, deep text into the tonalization, the stuff behind the tonalization studies. And in there, I actually talk about the uh, the motivic stuff, the language stuff, and it's what was I saying? I'm apologizing. I'm so sleepy. You can see my eyelids are down. Um, Talking about the motivic stuff. I lost my train of thought. Um, anyway, I'm talking about it in the book. Uh, oh yes, that's what it is. I mentioned in the book that the only place you're going to get that stuff is in my lessons because I haven't written any books about it yet. I would like to. Um, when I get some of these more important books done, I would like to have a jazz improv book that's got these tunes in it and the exercises and all that stuff. Um, but right now, you can only get bits and pieces outside of the lessons. And I even say in the book that this is not just so I can sell the book. I'm not just trying to protect my quote unquote intellectual property, which there's nothing wrong with that if I was, but that's not what it is. You guys know that I would freely share any of that stuff if it was available in print. It's just not available. So I'm not trying to like force people to take lessons or anything like that. Although I would love to teach people that want to do more of the motivic stuff. I would love to do that. All right. Hello, Jeffrey. Nice to see you. Um, Sean says playing a flugel's mouthpiece. It has a bigger cup, if that's the right terminology. Will that help with endurance? Yes, it does. I remember when I first got my Shelky F1, and I had just finished writing the Trumpet Chops Pro book. And the trumpet, when I first wrote the Trumpet Chops Pro, I had a little bit of endurance issues with that. That might have been because of the anemia. I think the anemia that I had went back 5 years, and I don't think the Trumpet Chops Pro book is 5 years old. Anyway, so when I played that routine the first time on the F1, that was bad. Endurance wise, it was really, really bad. But you guys heard me talk about this last week. If you're having endurance issues on a piece of equipment, just keep going. Just keep going. That's a great opportunity to build your chops. Karen says, would you suggest a particular mouthpiece for the flugelhorn? I'm going back to the trumpet Bach 3C, I think. Frustrated lately. Okay. So all I would say for the flugelhorn mouthpiece, it's sort of like looking for a cornet mouthpiece. If you have a cornet and you want to sound like a cornet player, you don't play on a C cup. It should be a deep V cup. Um, Now I got my mouthpiece on my flugelhorn. I had to buy a new one because this flugelhorn I have is French, so it's got a French lead pipe, and the mouthpiece that goes in there has to have what they call a French taper. So I had to buy a new one, and I bought the deepest one, the deepest Warburton flugelhorn mouthpiece with a French taper that I could get. I love the way it sounds. But yes, it is. It does make you more tired. Now let's talk about why it makes you more tired. It's not. It's not what you would think. I believe that when you play on a deeper mouthpiece, it forces you subconsciously. You don't even know it's happening. It forces you subconsciously to play louder. And we were just talking about that. Because when you have more edge in the sound, you back off a little bit. But if you don't have that edge in your sound, which is what a deep mouthpiece does, and add to that the mellow tone of a flugelhorn, yes, you're going to play louder. And physically, that can, we just talked about that earlier, physically, that can take a toll on your endurance. All right. Hello, Lucas. Lucas says, what should I do if I tongue too hard? Should I change the syllable I use to tongue? Let me ask you this. What makes you think that you tongue too hard? You know what happens to teachers all the time is the students make their own diagnosis based on what they see online or whatever. And so I love the thing about um, long tones, right? Um, they say if you have this, and that, then you don't practice enough long tones, or you don't practice enough arbin, or you don't practice enough lip slurs. And and the student will say, "Oh, well, I have this, and that, so I better start doing more long tones, or better start practicing the arbin, or I better start practicing more lip slurs." Um, So, Lucas says a lot of people have told me that I tongue too hard. Let me share screen and show you what I learned from Charlie Geyer. And now, Charlie Geyer was a teacher. He recently passed away. Very, very sad for me because he made a huge difference. For someone only giving me one single lesson, he sure made a huge difference. I'm looking for my chart software, and then I'll share a screen for you. Okay, let me share a screen. Share screen. Where is it? Window. Okay, here we go. All right. I'm going to draw two mouths, and my mouths tend to be very vicious. Like those are like vampire teeth, right? And let me do another one over here. because there's two of these. Up, not so vampire that time. Okay. All right. So, first off, there's two ways to tongue. The first way to tongue is with a tongue that's physically shaped like this, where this is the tip of the tongue, and we'll go deeper into that. And then there's another way to tongue where this is the tip of the tongue. Some people call this here feather dusting. Okay. This over here is very different. Now, what I'm going to do, I thought there was an eraser. Now I've lost my eraser. Okay. Never mind. Let's talk about how this works. Each one of these, I break it up into 4 things. Now, I say I got this from Charlie Geyer. The way I teach it is a little bit different. I teach 4 different positions. In reality, there's more than 4. So the first position is here at the tip of the teeth. The second position is at the gum line. The third position is above the gum line. And then you have this back here. Now, this one is impractical. This one is impractical. I only list them because they are hypothetically possible. Then here, it's this one that's impractical. We can still do it, but it's not practical. Then we have the gum line, and here and here. You know what? I think I got this wrong. There's this one, then the back of the teeth, then the gum line, and then up here on the gum. I apologize. I'm going to blame dialysis. So there's my 4 positions. It's the same 4 positions for both tongue shapes. The difference between the two is how the tongue, we're going to now take away these tongue drawings and move them into position. So like if we tongue with the tip of the tongue at the gum line, it's going to look like that where this is the tip. Okay? Same thing if we tongue on the back of the teeth. The actual tip of the tongue is the only thing hitting the back of the teeth. This other way, if you put the tip of the tongue here, but fill in all of this with your tongue, try that. While you are sitting there, put the tip of your tongue at the end of your teeth, then push the rest of your tongue into it'll be like this, right? Instead of like this, push the rest of your tongue into the back of your teeth. That's this one. almost always when someone is tonguing too hard, they're doing this one, not this one. It's almost impossible to tongue too hard with this tongue shape. Now, let's talk about, I hope that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions about what I just shared with you right there? Because I want to move on and get into the stylistic side of this. Let me stop sharing real quick. Um, let's talk about the stylistic side of this. When I teach this to my students, I never tell them they were tonguing wrong or too much of this or too much of that. That's not how I teach articulation now, thanks to Charlie Geyer. All of my teachers, except for Dick Schaefer, all of my teachers told me I was tonguing wrong. And I took what they said to heart. And it screwed me up. That's why Dick Schaefer and I, in the last 6 months of our lessons, we worked on the same etude. It was a beach etude, right? If you're not familiar with that book, I think his first name is Marcel Beach, and I don't know how to pronounce the last name. It's French. I think it's Bitche or something like that. Um, and if it's the other pronunciation, I won't say that. Okay, if you catch my drift. Anyway, we spent the last 6 months trying to get me to tongue properly for the piece that we were playing. Um, and I guess the right word for that is appropriately, not properly. Try to tongue appropriately. Now, there were other people that like I had a single lesson with a guy in Chicago when I lived there. And he talked about how short needs to be shorter. And an example he gave, and I'm not playing the right notes. It's been so long since I played any orchestra music. I'm playing it by ear. So for me to play that as short as I'm playing it, I'm using the one that the tongue fills in the air, fills in the space. Okay. Um, if you want to play short, that's excellent. That's a proper way to do it. Um, I use so let me summarize what Dick Schaefer taught me. I wasn't using the one that fills the space. I was only ever because all these people telling me that's not the right way to tongue. That's not the right way to tongue. So I would tongue the way all these people teach, and they were all different, which I understand now. But uh, I only ever did the feather dusting, tall, right? Um, which is what most band directors want, I think, until they don't, and then they can't. They don't have the vocabulary. The band directors don't have the vocabulary to tell you what they want according to what I just showed you, because they think that to do the other kind of tonguing is wrong, not just inappropriate, wrong. And if they say that it's wrong, how can they tell you to do that later? That's why the better word is appropriate. You don't get in trouble when you say appropriate. Okay. So anyway, when I finally learned what he was teaching me, Dick Schaefer, My salsa career took off because when I play salsa, and also for that matter, lead in a big band, you cannot play those styles with a da 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 tongue. So you can't play like that with a da 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 tongue. And physically speaking, what I showed you at the top where the tongue fills in the oral cavity, that's what I just did right now. That's great for salsa. It's great really for anything that you have to play that's loud. Ooh, thunder. I don't know if you could hear that. Hopefully it doesn't shut us down. All right. Um, so yes, there's times to do one and there's times to do the other. And you have to know which one to do. It's very physical. It's very physical. Now, I had one teacher, the one that I don't name his name because we didn't get along, and I don't want to talk badly about him. So, just like everything else, I won't say his name. That way, I can still talk about what my experience with him without saying bad stuff about him, okay? Technically. And he told me in the lesson that your tongue is stupid and doesn't know what it's doing. I don't think it has to be like that. I understand what he's saying, but it doesn't have to stay that way. You can train yourself to be able to know what's going on in your mouth. You know what you can do? Let me go grab something real quick. I bought a bag of cherries today. If you want to train yourself to get better at being more aware of what's going on in your mouth, you take a stem of a cherry and you put it in your mouth and you try to tie it into a knot. I'm not going to do it now because it takes me a while to get it done, but I can actually do it. And this is the kind of thing you can do that makes you more aware, makes you more aware of what's going on in your mouth. Try to tie a knot with a cherry stem. And yes, you can train yourself to feel all that, to become more aware, consciously aware. Now, you guys have heard me say, so a lot of times what I teach, and you know what, this is funny, right? Now that I'm saying this in this context, because that teacher would always tell me whenever we had confrontation, he would always tell me, well, at least I'm consistent. Um, I have never been consistent my whole career as a teacher. I'm to the point now when if someone is consistent all the time and nobody ever finds a flaw in what they're saying, nobody ever finds discrepancies and stuff like that, I don't trust that teacher. It's supposed to. This is another one of the things that they do so that people will trust them more. Oh, I'm consistent. I always say it that way. Um, Warning. That puts off warning bells in my mind. Why? Because when you think bigger thoughts, there are contradictions. When you think bigger on a more grand scale, there are contradictions that need to be clarified. So, what am I talking about now? Um, I'm constantly telling you guys that this is all subconscious, subconscious, subconscious. Now I'm telling you that you take a cherry stem and you tie it in a knot. I think I learned that at a bar. I'm embarrassed to say that, but I remember someone took the cherry off of their drink and tied it in a knot. Ate the cherry, put this in their mouth, and tied it in a knot. There might also be a scene in a movie, if I remember right. Um, but no, I got it from some guy at a bar. Um, but yes, there's a contradiction, right? I'm telling you subconscious, subconscious, subconscious. Now I'm telling you conscious. Well, in order to fix something that's already subconscious, you have to bring it back into your conscious mind. Does that make sense? So when I go on and on and on about developing your subconscious, I'm not saying that we are excluding all other forms of thought. No, 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 no. It's the right tool for the right job. So, yes, trying to tie one of these into a knot with your mouth, with your tongue, can go a long way towards making you more aware of what's going on in there. You can also do off the horn, right? So if you want to change from one of these positions to another, the tongue shape, I call them tongue shape. If you want to change from one tongue shape to the other tongue shape, then you need to get it off the horn and start. By the way, there's an exercise you can do for the one that fills the cavity, right? They call it spitting rice. I actually got this exercise from an interview with Miles Davis. He was talking about how his teacher taught him how to tongue. And he said he gave him a bag of rice. He took that bag wherever he went, put the rice on the tip of his tongue, and spit it. Well, when you spit like that, the 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 tongue fills that oral cavity at least up at the front. So now I took one lesson with Armando Catala, and when I took that lesson with him, I told him because he said, "You obviously don't have chop problems. What are you here for?" And I told him I appreciated his sense of musicality, his expression, and stuff like that. I told him I had his recordings of that early recording he did of the Hummel, and I told him I just loved the idea of his sense of expression and musicality. And his eyes light up. His eyes lit up. He was like, "Oh wow!" And you know what? He gave me like a 2 hour lesson. You know, all the one time lessons that I've had with famous people were all at least 2 hours. Even when I went and had a lesson, I think I don't remember exactly, but I think when I took a lesson with Jeff Curnow in Dallas, this was back when he was principal trumpet of the Dallas Symphony. If I remember right, that lesson was also over an hour long. Um, so anyway, um, if you want to switch to a different tongue, then you go slow motion. Be very so if you're trying to go from the one that fills it to the one that has a big, more open oral cavity, do that off the horn first. Because here's what happens when you pick the horn up, all of that psychological stuff kicks back in again. This is how what why uh, embouchure changes are so hard to do. If it weren't for that one thing, you pick the horn back up again. This is why, by the way, we do the mouth, the air, the mouthpiece. I mean, air, lip buzz, mouthpiece, through it like that. is to retrain yourself. Because if all you did was try to do it different and then put your horn up, all that stuff that you do in your subconscious kicks back in again and you can't do it. So you have to stop and take it off the horn. So anything major like that that you're trying to do, stop. Take the horn off and do it physically without the horn first. I think the spitting rice thing is great if you're going the other direction. If you have if you have what Dick Schaefer used to call band director staccato, ta 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 ta, right? If you have band director staccato and you want to switch to this other shape, um, do it off the horn first. And one way, like I was about to say, one way to do it off of the horn is the spitting rice thing. It's a great way to do it. Now, Schaefer taught me to do like, you know, say the word hut like from a football hut, but I couldn't do it the way he was doing it. He wanted me to do hut so that the air would push the tongue into position like that with the word hut. It never worked for me. That's why I'm not a big, that's part of the reason why I'm not a big fan of syllables outside of jazz. Um, Now, in jazz, I think syllables are great for style. The very first master class I ever went to was not Clifford Brown. I'm not that old. Um, Clark Terry. And he was talking about a book. I have not found the book where he uses syllables to get the right style. Like, for example, the word DAT, that. So you play the note, that, and then you stop the note with your tongue. Anyway, let me move on. Karen says, I learned tip of the tongue at top of the teeth and never much else. Right, that's right. That's the other one. That's the one that um on the of the two, the bottom one that I showed you. She says, you always have such interesting insights and ideas. Makes me think, you mean there's another way? Right, exactly. You know where that comes from? It's, there are people here in Houston, at least in the 90s, right? And probably before that. They take lessons in high school from the a guy that's taking lessons with the guy at college. And then when he graduates, he goes to that teacher's teacher. And then when that one graduates, he goes to that teacher's teacher. And what you have, and I know this is kind of gross, but I call it musical inbreeding. You don't get a variety of thoughts, you just get the one right way when there is no such thing as the one right way. I call it musical inbreeding when you never have any influences outside. My father was military. My first teacher was in Maryland. My second teacher was in the South, North Carolina. My third teacher was in Hawaii. My fourth, fifth, and sixth teachers were in El Paso. And what's nice about El Paso when it comes to what I'm talking about, El Paso was cut off. So the pedagogy of the people who were in El Paso, even though there was some influence from outside, the pedagogy there was stuck. So here I am contradicting myself again, right? It was good for me that it was stuck because I already had all these others. Then I leave El Paso And I have that one lesson in Chicago. All of these are entirely different from each other. The pedagogy, it always amazes me. And then I moved to Houston, and once again, different, different. It always amazes me how well these trumpet players get along when they're in a convention or something, because in reality, they don't really. I'm sure I'm talking about socially, they get along fine. Musically, they are so different from each other. But it's not, I think it's a rudeness thing. I don't think they ever challenge each other in public like that. The only time they will ever challenge somebody like that is if they don't like you. And when I say they, I mean all of them don't like you. There's a trumpet player, once again, I won't name his name, but he's notoriously rude and notoriously, um, what do you call it? He's racist. Everybody hates him, right? Racist, misogynistic. Everybody hates him. I don't hate him. I don't hate people. He hates me because I told him he can't talk that way on my Facebook channel. But yes, they'll talk badly about that guy. They'll challenge his trumpet beliefs because they don't like him. But all these other guys, they get along. And they just somehow silently agree not to challenge each other. I think all of us would be better off if they did, but there's a politeness thing going on, and they don't do that. It's actually very non scientific, it's non academic. I would even go as far as to say that it's actually not very, very academic. Academics should challenge each other without getting their feelings hurt. That's my opinion. Um, yes, Karen says, I suppose I make some adjustments and don't realize it. Sean says, have you ever considered making a video of yourself playing a full routine for your students? Yes, I have, and no, I won't. I'll get into that in a second. When practicing particular routine, if you get tired, doing that and hitting the notes is difficult. Do you just push through or do you rest and then come back? Both. There are times when it's appropriate to push through. There are times when it's not appropriate to push through and you should rest and come back. Let me give you a better answer for that first question. Most of you guys who have had lessons with me know that the exercises are not supposed to sound good. This is, once again, I have a lot of controversial things that I teach. If you give priority to the air, but you haven't mastered the exercise yet, it should sound awful. I'm going to say that one more time because the purpose of this channel really is, it's a primary purpose. I don't mind answering other questions, but the primary purpose is to talk about the stuff that isn't clear in my books. That's why I'm here to do this. That's the primary reason I'm doing this. Um, One of the most difficult things to understand is this air thing. The air should be what I call fire hose air for all those exercises. No variety in the air. Don't let the air go down. Don't let the air go up. One steady level of air through all the exercises. If you play like that and your lips have not mastered the exercise yet, it sounds horrendous. And if your priority in my books, my routine books, if your priority in my books is to sound good, you better, what am I saying? It's better off if you just don't use my books at all. I'm serious. If you don't make the air a priority over the sound, you're missing the whole point. We want fire hose air. When the lips catch up, the lips catch up. And yes, now you can play perfectly. The reason I won't make a recording of myself playing the exercises is because I don't want you to have the wrong impression. I want you to struggle. I want you to struggle with the air, trying to maintain that fire hose air while the lips struggle to get the right notes, to get the right pitch, to get a good sound. I don't want you to try to get a good sound. Well, I do want you to get a good sound, but only as a second priority, not a first priority. First priority is get that air right. So that's why I won't even demonstrate it in public. I made that decision a long time ago. A long time ago. I want you to struggle. And if I play it without struggle, which is not all the time, sometimes I still struggle, but if I play it without struggling, it gives you the wrong impression. It sends the wrong message. Okay? It sends the wrong message. So that's a great question. David asks, how does the spitting rice tonguing work with double and triple tongue? So basically, let me share screen again. Basically, when you have this tongue, where you hit in the back is farther back. So when you move the tongue back again, it's got to hit farther back here. That's the back of your tongue hitting the roof of your mouth. When you do this one, oops. When you do this one, the back of the tongue has to hit more like here. I'm trying to draw with a mouse, sorry. Yeah, the back of the tongue has to be here because the oral cavity is smaller. So if now let me tell you this, I rarely, if ever, I don't even recall a time when I tongued like that, double tongue. When I double tongue, I usually do this one, not this one. That said, shouldn't we be ready to do whatever? So yes, um, that's what the answer is. Because the oral cavity is smaller, the back of the tongue has to hit farther forward. Their gamer says, "Hello, Mr. Lewis. Hello. What to think? Oh, what? I want to thank you once again. Just finished the apprentice routine from your express book. Made huge progress starting as Tyro player half a year ago. Thank you. Wonderful. I love to hear from people that are making progress on the books. I love it. I also had a great time with my chops on the 10-day concert tour through Europe, all the way to Sweden to the Student Orchestra Fest. Greetings from a fellow trumpet player of the ACO Big Band from Stuttgart." Hey, that's great. That's great. Well, greetings. Yes. Great to hear from you. Thanks for your update. David says, wow, air over sound in doing the routine. I have not understood that before. I'm sorry if I didn't make it clear enough. That's, I don't really consider myself all that good of a teacher because I do still get it wrong. The way I speak doesn't always make sense. I understand that. Um, you know who understands that better than anybody else is my wife. Okay. Oh my. All right. Um, Sean says, I hear people talk about make everything must sound musical. Um, he says, I appreciate your answer. Thank you. Now, when we make everything sound musical, I think that's absolutely true for the music side. That's absolutely true for the music side and also exercises that fall outside of my routine. I had a student one time. I'm way over time this time. I'm sorry. I had a student one time that I told him because he was making all the routine exercises as musical as he could. And in about the sixth lesson, I told him, "You need to stop doing vibrato and all this stuff. Don't do the music, the exercises um, musically." And he got angry with me. He got angry. He says, "Why didn't you tell me that 6 weeks ago?" And I told him, "Because I didn't have time to write a book." and my point was, and he got it, right? He understood what I was saying. The more important problems have to be addressed first. That wasn't the most important problem at the time, right? For this student, that wasn't the most important problem when he first started with me. So when he finally cleared those things away, I could now talk to him about a better way to do the routine. Oh, it made him angry. But we got it squared away. Um, anyway, Gary says, "Hello, Gary. Is higher notes the back of the tongue more forward with respect to the double tongue?" You can do it like that, yes. So, oh no, no, I see what you're saying. Yes, that's how I do it. As the as the tongue arch goes up, the double tongue has to be more small, just like what we were talking about with the other tongue position. As you go higher with the double tongue, and you guys know that my double tongue exercises use your full range. When you get up into the higher register, now this doesn't apply to people that are at the tyro level or the player level. But once you get past the player level, the tongue arch needs to raise enough so that there's resonance on the higher notes. Without the tongue arch, there's no resonance. So, yeah, you have to um, raise the tongue arch so that, and because the tongue arch is raised, the amount of space that the tongue moves is much, much smaller in the upper register. Much smaller. All right, I got time for one more. Kevin actually says, and you probably know this, you're teaching that the exercise and airflow is a priority over sound is consistent with Caruso's book. No, I don't remember that. I've read his book. I have a copy and I've read it a few times. I don't remember that. Maybe that's where I got it from. Maybe. I've had that book since I was in high school, college, something like that, 80s. It still has my parents' old address on it. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out. We went 15 minutes over, and I shouldn't do that. I've got so much stuff to get done all the time. Um, have a great weekend. God bless you, and we will see you next time. Bye.